Welcome everyone to the Wednesday, January 28th Planning Commission meeting. Let's do a roll call first.
Okay, Tom Sahlberg,
Here.
Bill Hoyer, Joe Mann,
Here.
Jim Baumker,
Here.
DG Garcia, here, Charlie Jenks,
Here.
Gene Hushel,
Here.
and Troy Mullins.
Here.
Thank you.
I need a motion. Phil called and needs to be excused for today.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Let's do a pledge of allegiance.
Oh.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to make a motion that we change the order of the meeting and hold off on the review and the approval until we can move the planning commissioner reports section into that. So my motion would be that we have some preliminary things that we need to discuss, and that we be able to do that before we start our workshops. So that would be moving 7, which is kind of bullet point B, to 4 under general business.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Okay, then let's get into it. All in favor?
Aye.
I want to thank Joe and Phil for their examples of doing a really good job as the chairs. Joe especially for putting up with our back and forth talks and his Southern charm that he's allowed us all grace, and I will try to do the same. One of the things that I would like to do in the future here, and Amy and I have discussed it, and actually thank you, Mark, for being here because Mark and I have discussed it, is to streamline our meetings. The commissioners must review the material before the meetings, and we don't need to have people read us PowerPoints, and we don't need to have an extensive discussion about things that our staff and our consultants have prepared. They're our experts. This is our commission, and I want to have more time for discussion and less time for going over and over and over material. Okay. I've given you all a little sheet that just as a reminder, this is just basic Robert's rules, and we're going to use those in the meeting. I don't anticipate, it's never really been a big issue here that we don't follow the rules, but it's just a refresher for you. Charlie sent me an email, and any of you that have an issue or something that you want to address in the meeting, just let me know anytime. You've got my home phone numbers too, and we can talk about that. We won't be talking about commission business while we're doing that separate from here. But the one thing that he suggested was we need to reduce the amount of materials and information and focus on keeping it simple. And I think that that's something that all of us could agree on. And I know that when I say streamlining, that's what we would do. So I hope that we can all agree on doing that. Charlie, when we get to that material, I think you'll have some discussion on that. Sure. Okay. There also wanted to address, there was an email, and this is the third time that I know of that we've received emails from an individual who does not live in Liberty Lake. His name is Gene Cohen. We're not going to spend a lot of time talking about it because the issues that he addresses are not a crisis for Liberty Lake. They, in fact, are not Liberty Lake's business. So if you have a question about that, let's discuss that not in our meeting. I have no intention of having that be an issue that we're going to waste any time on. Okay, that's a Liberty Lake sewer and water issue, and it's a county commission issue, not ours.
Never saw it.
Well, I've had 3 of them, and I called Mr. Cohen and I had a conversation with him probably a month or so ago, and it went from information to the next level to now being a crisis. It's not a crisis for us. Okay. Just a reminder that we have a requirement of making sure that everybody has gone through the training for the Open Public Meetings Act. Everybody within If you haven't done it, we got to do it every 4 years. So make sure that if you don't have it, there's a website for us all to review if you need to do it. It's not a bad thing. I usually review it once a year anyway, because there are things that come up all the time. And the last thing is, we're going to have to make a decision and put some time into an ordinance discussion. I encourage everybody to look at the ordinance again, if you haven't. It talks especially about us staying in our lane, what our lane is as a planning commission. The purpose of the planning commission is to study and make recommendations to the mayor and city council for Liberty Lake's future growth through continued review of the city's comprehensive land use plan, zoning code or development regulations, shoreline management, which takes us a long time to discuss, environmental protection, transportation system, capital improvements, and other matters as directed by the council. All of this is what our comp plan is. So that's our job. Any of the other peripheral discussions, I think we need to keep. If you've got something that is a burning matter that isn't on our agenda, please save it. We can have a conversation or I'll invite you to coffee and we can have, let's deal with the things that are in our lane. Any other commissioner reports? Any other commissioner comments? Amy, you want to follow up on things that you may have thought about how we can streamline the meetings? And
No, I'll just put that into action.
yes, well,
Keep it succinct and I will stand for questions afterwards.
good. All right. Moving on then, our approval of the agenda. I need a motion to approve the agenda as has been amended.
Move to approve.
Okay,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
And then approval of the minutes from January 14th. Are there any changes, additions, corrections? I learned that Jen spells her name G-E-N. Thank you, Kathy. Motion to approve the minutes
Move to approve. Mr.
and a second.
Second.
Right, all in favor?
Aye.
And that'll pass, and we're moving on to workshops, climate resiliency.
So just for a little bit of background, there's a little bit of a misnomer on the agenda. It says climate resiliency, and this is part of climate resiliency, but it's specifically addressing transportation resiliency. When we did kind of the first round of what we're required to do for the climate chapter, the public engagement from that really told us that the resiliency of our transportation plan and evacuation routes in the case of an emergency were a big priority. So we had our climate consultant also look at that and prepare kind of a plan for that. So John and Beth are online and they're going to present about the transportation resiliency plan.
Thank you.
So I will stop sharing and I will let Beth share her screen.
John and Beth, would you introduce yourselves as you speak?
Yes, my name is John Phillips. I work for Parametrics and I assisted Liberty Lake with the climate element of the comprehensive plan and the resiliency, specifically the resiliency planning. We use transportation planners for this, and we're going to summarize some of their work just fairly quickly so you have a good overview of what it is, and then we'll be presenting a memo and coordinating with the next topic, which is the transportation network plan. So transportation resiliency plan. Next slide, please, Beth. So why do we do it? Really, it's about the evacuation, emergency response, and access during emergencies that we're most concerned about. The biggest risk we were looking at for Liberty Lake was wildfire. So in the context of wildfire, how does the transportation network operate during emergencies? And what we really want to know is look at the reliability of the public transportation system in light of an emergency. And Amy's correct. We had some workshops about a year ago with some of your public safety folks there. And this is something they pointed out to the group that, making sure we understand which routes people use, how it'll be used, and how many people will be using those routes. Say if there's a wildfire in the southeast area of outside of Liberty Lake that moves through Liberty Lake or has people having to evacuate through the city of Liberty Lake. Next slide, please, Beth. So just as a reminder, last year we went over a little bit of the climate hazards. We pointed out most of the hazards are, in the future, but wildfires around now. And it's going to just get more increase in more days of wildfire risk as time moves on. So the summers will be longer. You'll have more of a wildfire window, and the risk of wildfire will increase over time, along with some increases in precipitation, which will help stimulate growth of some of the underbrush and other things. That wildfire season could be pretty intense. So we took that lens and went ahead and looked at the transportation system within Liberty Lake to understand how people would move through Liberty Lake, where would they be coming from? And this includes people outside of the city limits that would have to get through Liberty Lake to get out of their neighborhood to a safe spot or to some sort of evacuation center. Next slide, please, Beth. We kind of talked about this, but also just as a reminder, smoke is another issue when there's a wildfire, not just smoke that was from the wildfire that might be locally or wildfires across the region that may disrupt the infrastructure without actually directing the damage or directly damaging the infrastructure. And just to remember that wildfires just really disrupt access. People want to move away from it. Down power lines, high winds, other things will also damage that infrastructure and may limit the ability of people to move from one point A to point B as they need to. Next slide, please. As I said earlier, we're seeing these trends. These are going to continue through this century. The drier summers and also just more smoke events. We'll know that other places outside of Washington State or even outside of Spokane County will have wildfires that will impact Liberty Lake and Spokane County with smoke and other things, as also to think about people evacuating to the area because there isn't a wildfire at that time. Next slide, please. So how did we go about doing this? There's 3 steps to looking at your transportation system from a resiliency perspective. The one is a criticality assessment, and we'll go into a little bit more detail with some maps here in a second. How important are those corridors? How many cars can they actually hold? And also, what's their classification? What type of controls do they have on it? And where are the areas of employment and where are the areas of population that we wanted to evacuate? Then the next is looking at the transportation system from its vulnerability perspective. What may impact that transportation system? Some sort of natural hazard or outside, mostly through looking at the wild urban interface, which they call WUI, where there is vegetation that is high likely to cause wildfires and sustain wildfires, and then also see where those corridors are and where those areas are where there's a lot of vegetation and things that would block access as people are trying to move out. And then we combine the criticality and vulnerability, and we identify corridors of the highest concern. And then we can overlay that with where we see the wildfires moving to and from to get a better sense of how people will leave the area or evacuate that area. And you'll see that kind of in these maps, but most important thing is to identify risk. So the criticality of the infrastructure within Liberty Lake, see North Liberty Lake Road, and this is probably very obvious to you during rush hour. These are the roads where most people travel. They're the roads with the most traffic volume, but also they're the ones that would bring people from one area to another. So the yellow area is kind of the more traditionally the neighborhood areas, moving people from there to Interstate 90, and they could get out of the area either east or west, depending on the evacuation routes. Also remember, as people are trying to get out, emergency services are heading towards the emergency, whether that's police trying to get out to make sure people can evacuate and check for vulnerable populations that may have trouble evacuating, and all the fire responses that are needed for a wildfire that have to travel the same roads. And that reflects kind of a system-wide importance. So these are the roads, the ones in red, that have the most importance. And then the kind of orange to yellow kind of tiers it down a little bit. Anyway, that's looking at the criticality. The next one is to look at the vulnerability of those roads. So where are things that are going to keep that road or damage that road? If you notice the network outside and around the lake, where there's lots more vegetation and homes, those areas are going to be more vulnerable because they may be blocked. And then we found other areas where if certain roads are blocked, people will have a hard time getting out. And that could be blocked because power lines fall or poles fall or something blocks the road or access to that road as well. So kind of a grand overview of how vulnerable that road is to not being accessible by people wanting to use it. And then also looking at kind of what happens after the fire, just to identify where there might be burn scars that allow for landslides and mud flow that might block those roads, and that needs to have road crews out there removing the debris. Next slide, please, Beth. So then we take those two, the criticality and the vulnerability, and we put them together. We add them up basically and look at those roads that are most important. And the ones in red are the ones we want to focus on, but we also want to overlay that with what our colleagues are doing on the network side of what kind of projects and infrastructure improvements are they recommending, and how does that align with this resiliency movement? So it's more or less to help in the planning process and the decision making than it is to say there's something specific to do here. But we will talk about some short actions that can be done and things we might recommend as part of that, those actions that might go into the transportation network plan. And then all this framework and the way we did this pretty much reflects the Federal Highway Administration's guidance on looking at resiliency of your transportation system. Next slide, please, Beth. So some of the things that can be done. One is, the main thing is vegetation management, moving vegetation away from the roads, especially taller trees and stuff that might fall and block the road, but also just looking at how that vegetation is maintained along the edge of the roads and roadway to keep the fires from getting too close to it. I'm sure everyone has seen news stories of the different fires that have happened, especially a year ago in California, where you saw a lot of roads were blocked and people trying to get out of roads. We look at those too. We look at those images as well when we're thinking about this to say, hey, if we're looking down this corridor, what does it look like? And what kind of maintenance can be done to clear that vegetation far enough back that that road is accessible in the event the fire starts moving close to it and people are trying to get out. What we also can look at is how people can move for coordination and communication, right? Do we tell people further away to evacuate sooner and keep people sheltered in place until those folks can get out? So there isn't a mass rush to get out of it. Obviously, you can't keep people in their homes, but the ability to communicate and coordinate when people are leaving and getting out of areas as the fires move through the area. And also thinking about durable materials and how drainage is maintained as well. Those are other things we can recommend as far as next steps. So we want to integrate this with the priorities in your capital management plan. This isn't something separate. We would just look at how things are being done and what recommendations are being moved through the transportation network plan and any kind of other capital improvements, and say, hey, here's something you can do along with that project that would make it more resilient. In other words, give the designers some more information and the city staff to say, hey, here's some things that could be done to help improve this intersection if you're thinking about it as a major evacuation route. The other thing we'd like to do, and we'll be doing this soon, is kind of coordinating with emergency management and fire agencies, let them kind of ground truth what we put together, ask them if there's areas where their trucks can or can't move, and where do they find any issues with intersections or roads that may not be open or are available for them to use during an emergency. Those are the kind of things we can coordinate with them, and they know the roads really well. They know where their equipment can move through. So that's something to kind of talk about. The other thing we want to coordinate too, we didn't really kind of put this in there, but just to think about is, are there recommendations to Spokane County that we can make on roads outside of Liberty Lake to be improved that could serve as secondary or primary evacuation routes for people that might want to evacuate outside of the city limits and not have to go through the city of Liberty Lake? We're looking at that kind of a more broad perspective of, are there other roads out there to use in an event of emergency, or if something happens within Liberty Lake, people can have a second route out. And then, of course, as important with any of these types of planning processes, to make sure as things change, as developments come in, as the roads improve, we update that analysis of conditions and see how those improvements improved that particular condition of that road network. And with that, quickly, we will have a full-on memo with all this information out probably by our next meeting. So with that, I'm going to turn it over for questions.
Commissioner Mullix.
Quick question on the coordination with the other agencies. Do you guys sometimes take it further and have those agencies or look into yourselves as far as what other places have learned? You mentioned the fires in California, and I always go back to the historic tragic fires in Lahaina 2.5 years ago. Learning from those horrible incidents and being able to take what happened in those and apply it to Liberty Lake to make sure that we don't make those same mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. And we spotted that in one of the kind of neighborhoods. It was kind of off to the northwest where they were pretty isolated, even though it didn't show up as like a major road. That neighborhood could be isolated fairly quickly if something would happen, which is a lesson learned from both the Marshall Fire in Colorado and without a doubt in Lahaina. Um, yeah, we do look at those, and we do look at the reports that come out most immediately after the disaster, and then as time moves on, kind of keep track of what they're saying, especially around transportation, evacuation, and vulnerable populations. And those are three big things in our mind that we keep in mind when we're looking at these. And also, we're looking at data and numbers, but then we want to ground truth that too. So we've all visited Liberty Lake. We've been through there. We have local staff that have driven around. So we kind of ask those questions too, like what would happen at 5 o'clock in the afternoon if you're trying to move people from here to here, or on a weekend if there was an event in Idaho, say, and everybody's trying to get across the border and everybody's trying to come back because something happens in Idaho. So we kind of look at that from the realistic point of view, things that have triggered us to think a little bit about that based on those other tragic fires. Definitely from Lahaina, you really, really want to look closely at the transportation in the neighborhoods and what are their other options for evacuation.
Right, because I look at, you're putting a lot of emphasis on I-90 for east-west. We have one north exit point in the city. We have two southern exit points in the city. So
Right.
all that emphasis being on I-90, it immediately took me back to Lahaina because they did not have a north-south route. They had an east route, if you will.
Right.
So, yeah, glad that all of that's being looked at. And I think that when you mentioned coordinating with Spokane County, especially for portions to the south, that is going to be huge, and making sure that everybody's on the same page and we have that plan in place.
Yeah, and we've seen that in the WUI maps as well, the wild urban interface, where there's actually pockets of population and buildings that would be isolated if there was a fire in kind of the surrounding vegetation. And what are their options to get out? If not through Liberty Lake, is there a secondary option?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Quick question.
Commissioner Balker,
Okay, yeah, this is
your mic.
nice analysis, all very informative, hypothetical. But how do you inform the public as to what they're supposed to do if there's an emergency? I don't think
Well,
we don't have any fire drills or anything like that.
you can definitely hold one if you wanted to. It'd be fun to see if people participated.
How would you
We
inform
did put that in as far as
do?
communication coordination, and it's really key. You're absolutely right. How evacuation routes are communicated out. I'm sure some of you have driven around on the west side of the state where you see the tsunami evacuation signs. In other states, we're starting to see signs pop up to say wildfire evacuation route. And that's totally, an option as far as what we can do to help support that, right? This is the place, if you're driving a street, you would see wildfire evacuation route, just like you'd see tsunami evacuation route here out on the west side where there's tsunamis. There's different things we're also learning, as other commissioner had just mentioned, from these other ones as they're recovering from these and rebuilding their infrastructure of what they're doing to be better communicating to the public about ways in and out. And I think that's really key. And that's, we as consultants can make recommendations, but people in the community that are leaders, people in the communities that are heavily involved can also communicate to their neighbors and to others what's happening, plus a good outreach strategy through like Spokane Valley Fire or through your police and emergency services to say, hey, this is how we might do this. And you can hold fire drills with those folks, emergency services, fire departments, to kind of say, what if, and run scenarios with kind of an emergency management. You're obviously not going to get everybody in Liberty Lake to participate in a fire drill. But if the folks having to do the work can go through it a few times, it becomes kind of second nature. As a former military, I know all about drilling. So
Yeah.
I get where you're coming from, and communication. And there's different ways to do that. And like I said, there's lots of good lessons learned out there now too.
Is that something that would be within our scope, Tom? Recommendations to the city council with respect to communication, or is that somebody else's problem to worry about?
Well, I'm going to turn that question to Amy, because we discussed this with CPAT and that we really don't have a plan. We do not have
I know.
coordinated communication, but
We are working.
then, and that was 6 months ago, there was some work towards that.
Yeah, and they are, I know the directors and Mark and other people are currently working on I don't want to get the title wrong, but essentially a hazard mitigation plan and a continuation of operations plan. And so those things are at the forefront and things that we're working on. We are kind of, currently for the hazard mitigation, we are annexed into the county's plan. That's why they mentioned it's important for us to coordinate with Spokane County. And so they're going through an update of their plan. And once their update is finished, then we will be able to kind of come in with our bigger piece, but it's definitely in the works right now.
So, yeah, so it's beyond our scope is what you're telling me, but I'm just saying as a citizen,
The scope for that.
I would sure as hell like to know where I'm supposed to go in case of a wildfire.
Yeah.
That's all.
That's fair.
And so, Amy, do you know in terms of the groups that are involved, because we did discuss this, we know that we have county emergency services,
Mhm.
we have City of the Valley, we have Otis Orchards, and the county. Now, what I heard before, and we didn't have any answers to it, was the county is the only one that really has a workable plan right now, and it really doesn't include Liberty Lake, nor do I, as a citizen, I want to have the county making a plan for Liberty Lake. I'd like to have us help with that, so.
Yeah, so currently, like I said, we currently are a part of that. We currently have an annex to their plan, so we are included in that response. But as far as what is currently going on right now, I don't know very many of the details. I just know that it is happening and it is a priority.
Okay, sounds like when and if you hear things like that during your reports, letting us know if there really is a collaborative approach, communication,
Absolutely.
yeah. Any other questions? Thanks, John.
I have a question.
Oh, one more, hang on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
You know, the state of Washington is pushing on the counties and the cities to, in some cases, double and perhaps triple densities in residential areas as a way to address what Olympia sees as the housing crisis in the state of Washington. How are you addressing, or are you going to provide some direction to the city with regard to access, ingress and egress for housing areas that could see a significant increase in auxiliary dwelling units, and in some cases, a conversion from single family to duplex or triplex units? I mean, it's going to create a big change in some of these neighborhoods. Are you contemplating any recommendations with regard to that kind of impact?
good question.
Definitely your transportation network plan you'll hear about soon. It has growth and growth projections and where that growth would happen. Anything, the kind of coordination between where development, we're not specifically doing in the resiliency plan. We looked at where population and land use is and where population would be, but that goes more into the comp planning. Amy, I don't know if you want to address that a little bit more specifically, but we look basically at where the population areas are, and obviously if they increase in the road, the demand on the road would increase as well.
Okay. In the Lahaina issue on the island of Maui, they have a civil defense alert system that was supposed to go off, and the coordinator for the emergency services in Maui County was afraid that if it went off, that the people would think it was a tsunami coming and not a fire, so he didn't set it off. Do we have anything like that in the city of Liberty Lake or in Spokane County to alert people to some kind of danger?
The old air raid drills, the sirens that we used to have,
We do.
do we? I don't think-
We do have the emergency alert system.
Yep.
Every cell phone and every TV.
That's on here.
Yeah, that's right. And
Right.
that's where you would get
Is
it.
there anything else that alerts people to?
Like the sirens that we used to have.
Right.
I don't believe so.
I don't think so.
Yeah, there aren't sirens, but the police can also do announcements over the loudspeaker, and they generally move in and let people know it's time to evacuate. So that's a kind of what I would call the third form of that. And yes, you're not gonna have to worry about tsunamis in Liberty Lake. So you don't have tsunami warnings, but I would think any warning that would go out, even like a reverse 911 that calls your phone and says get out, or the text messages and things, that come out are compensated with your emergency services folks letting people know in key neighborhoods to get out. And that's something we can definitely recommend in here as we look at it from a perspective of what's their vulnerability and how do they coordinate. So that coordination step you see on there is still a next step. But it'd be great to hear from them too about what's efficient and what works and what doesn't work to get people to move when they need to move quickly. And even just making sure you have adequate capabilities to define the route on the way out. In other words, like police or other things to kind of say, here, going this way, don't turn right, don't turn left, go straight. You mentioned Lahaina, and one of the things that happened in Lahaina was there's a lot of wind prior to the fire, and then the wind increased during the fire. It knocked down telephone poles, which not a huge issue in Liberty Lake, but things falling across the road are something you have to be a cognizant of too, because it's those people that can remove things from the road are busy doing other things at that time. So that's another thing to be kind of alert to is what might fall across that road. The police brought that up during the resiliency workshop we had last year. They were very concerned about things when they're trying to evacuate being on the road. So they did everything they could to keep the roads clear. And that was the policemen doing that, not like fire department or, public works coming in and trying to do that. That was actually the police making sure the roads stayed clear so people could get out. So those are little things that are good impetus for thinking about it at a better sense and say, how can we do that a little bit better?
Thank you.
I have one question.
Commissioner Huschel.
Where are we going to evacuate to? I mean, why would you want to leave Liberty Lake? If we have a fire, where are you going to go? I mean, we have forest and hills and one really route that goes east and west. So why would we want to leave? Why not fight the fire? Have we taken a look at, I direct that as to the contractor here who's taken a look at this. Have we looked at fighting the fires with the people that we have here? I'm not so sure I would like to leave Liberty Lake.
There's a lot of people that didn't leave in California and stayed in the neighborhoods, and Harry
hopefully-
Truman never left when the volcano blew too. So people can stay and some people choose to, but yeah. John, can you address that?
I can't, I wish I was that cognizant of what people would do in an emergency. People are evacuated when they're vulnerable and people evacuate when they feel fear. So they will move along. If people choose to stay and fight, I mean, like you said, that's a choice you make. They are told to evacuate. Why would you leave Liberty Lake? Normally during a wildfire, when the wildfire is established, there's a evacuation center point where people are evacuated to. They don't just tell you to leave, they ask you to go to a certain point that would be safe and away from the fire. Mostly with the fire, you're dealing with smoke, and then you're starting to deal with heat and then the actual fire itself. So the people that don't like smoke will probably leave a lot quicker than the people that don't like the fire versus the people that would stay and try to defend their house. And people that stay sometimes make that choice, and they can. But the evacuation center is usually identified based on where it's safest to place people in the Spokane region, right? This would be a regional evacuation if it came out of Liberty Lake. Your safest point may be somewhere in Spokane County or in Spokane Valley.
Or in Idaho.
Or in Idaho, but we were looking at it thinking Idaho may not be the best direction to go. But if you had to, you could, right? There's places to go into coordination with Idaho as well and the neighboring counties. But most likely those folks would be evacuating to in a major wildfire and coming towards Spokane.
Well, that's
And you
why
do have centers that are large enough to accommodate people like fairgrounds and airports and things like that are usually chosen as evacuation centers. And then there's the ability to bring resources in to help people, whether it's food or water or shelter.
Well, I guess that's the point of my question. Have you identified where we would evacuate to?
We would identify that when we coordinate with emergency management in Spokane County. We look at where they would evacuate people to. You're right. I mean, we looked at this from the perspective of you could go either east or west. You're not going to go north very much. There's smaller roads going across the river, but it's going to be mostly an east-west evacuation. So most likely somewhere on the west side of Spokane Valley. But we want to verify that with the emergency managers and the emergency management plan and where they have kind of shelter centers. usually the fairgrounds are a place where people end up going, or larger educational institutions. We do a lot of this kind of resiliency work in Oregon, where they're going through that whole process of identifying places for people to evacuate to, and then making sure those places are ready. That would be the next step in this plan, was to look into where people might actually end up going, so we can better prepare emergency services for making that plan of where to send people.
Exactly. That's my whole point.
Yeah.
To the issue of what are we going to do? How are we going to notify people? Well, if they know in advance where our evacuation centers are. And I also would emphasize looking at Idaho, because in many of the experiences I've had, Idaho and Washington don't talk to each other very
No,
much.
that presupposes that they're actually a part of our coordinated effort and planning. And so far as I know, that has not occurred. And I'm not sure that Kootenai County would, we should. It's just an arbitrary line. And
Yeah.
if you want to go east, you got to go to Idaho.
There's more
Mhm.
than there are of them, so we can take over.
Yeah, we can do that.
Right.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Garcia.
Issue around tsunamis and that we're not a coastal area. But Washington State, and including Liberty Lake, has a high flood risk. We do, even though you say 100 years, we don't know what will happen in between those 100 years. So we still should, regardless of the severity of a storm, we should prepare for those things, as we're hopefully doing now. As you said, they're looking into all of that. So I don't want us to misunderstand that because we're not coastal, we'll have the tsunami to worry about, that we don't have to worry about it. And including people getting flooding insurance as well. They don't have it already. I think it's important for us not to mislead ourselves. We're going to be just fine in case of a flood.
Any other questions? Going once? Thank you, John.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Now, Amy, isn't this going to be a kind of a condensed transportation network analysis for the second,
Yes.
third time? Okay, thank
Second,
you.
but yes, it will be. So brief background, just so that we're all remembering what it is. So we had a previous version of the network analysis. It was done in 2017. It was updated in 2020 by resolution. This update was timely because that one is 5 years old. There's been a lot that's changed since 2020, and it sets us up to inform our comprehensive plan elements, namely transportation, capital facilities, and land use, but really bleeds into a lot of other ones too, as far as how people are going to get there. We had a planning commission workshop on the draft network analysis in September, and city council had a similar presentation in October. After that, we did some additional public engagement with our story map and also some coordination with our partners. We're in conversation with WashDOT and SRTC and other transportation agencies. And so that resulted in a few changes to the draft. So this presentation is going to focus on the changes since the last time you guys read this, were presented this information. And they're pretty minor. So to start with, the draft that you guys saw had the I-90 westbound off-ramp and East Country Vista Drive mitigation be a no build, is what it showed as a no build solution. And so they've changed that since then after conversations with WashDOT to show a multi-lane roundabout or a signal as the potential mitigation. The next change is North Harvard Road and East Wellington Parkway. We had in the draft, it was listed as a developer driven multi-lane roundabout, and we expanded that analysis to also include a signal. So that is what's in the final, is showing those as potential mitigations. On East Mission Avenue, the long-term mitigation said no build, and we changed that to say roundabout or signal, and that is to be coordinated with whatever we do there at Town Square. Some of the other changes is they just really added additional information to the different appendices. They gave us a cost estimate to some of their proposed solutions. They added some traffic data and addressed a comment that WashDOT had made. There were some minor text changes, updating the STA route and clarifying some of the language. And that's it. Those are the changes. And all of those are reflected in the draft that's contained in your packet. So I am here for questions or comments, or I would entertain a motion to provide a recommendation to council.
Well, thank you for all the work. I thought this was very extensive amount of work that was done on here, and it was very clear. And I thought that the illustrations and the explanations were very thorough. So other comments, Charlie? Yes.
Mr. Chair, yeah, a couple of comments. I think this is like the third time we've seen this.
Should be this, maybe second,
Okay,
could be third.
okay. As the chair said, it's very comprehensive. And from my perspective, coming from a public works background and looking at development applications, what you've done here is terrific, but you've done a lot of work for people that should be doing it for you, not you doing it. This is a great baseline to give somebody that says, I want to build 1,000 units. Here, use this network analysis and then come in with a traffic impact assessment report. We'll evaluate it against this. Great. The issue I have is how does this fit in a comprehensive plan? I'm used to dealing with general plans and comprehensive plans. I understand what they are and how they're used. A comprehensive plan that we develop goes out to Joe and Mary Smith, who lives in Liberty Lake, and they're going to look at this and say, what the hell is this?
Agreed.
They don't get it.
Yeah, so
No, okay, so hold on, let me finish my spiel, okay? Does this go into a technical appendices? Okay, when do we get to see the transportation element that you're gonna put in the plan?
So we reviewed that. Was that
And this goes,
January?
I have the
14th?
same comment for the park plan, all the level of service stuff, I think that's fantastic. But for the comprehensive plan for the folks who live in Liberty Lake, I could see maybe 2 or 3 pages. That's it,
Mhm.
not this.
No, the whole document won't go in there. It'll be more like an executive summary. And the mitigation solutions will also be reflected in the capital facility plan.
Okay,
So we're using it as baseline information, but this whole document will be appended to it, but it will not be integrated in it.
And the whole document won't be sent out to people in Liberty Lake.
No, it would be a simplified executive summary.
But there would be an available link to be able to find where this entire.
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea is to have the meat of the document and then all the appendices with different links to link you there so that the document itself isn't.
so if you want to look at the technical data, you can go to that and you can look at it if you're really interested in that.
Exactly,
Okay.
yes.
So again, when do we get, we've been through a lot of elements so far. When do we get to see a document put together that is the actual comprehensive plan
So April 22nd is my very ambitious date
Of
to
this
give you,
year?
of this year, April
Okay.
22nd, to give you a full, like what this is gonna be, and then that's when you guys will have a chance to look at it, and then we'll send that to city council, we'll have a similar workshop, and then we send it to Department of Commerce for their 60-day review.
Right.
Do you think it's a good idea to give the members of the commission all of this technical data to review? Do you think it really helps them? I mean, this is developed by the engineers you hire
Mhm.
to do the work.
Yes.
And I would have, making the assumption that they're doing a good job and maybe
Mhm.
could be a good assumption or a bad assumption at this point. But let's just assume for the moment, these are credible people. You're paying them a lot of money,
Mhm.
taxpayer money. This is great stuff, but I mean, level of service analyses for every intersection in the city, okay, I can go through this pretty quickly and I can see what I'm interested in, what I'm not interested in. And I've gone through and crossed off the sheets that I don't think I really need to see.
Mhm.
Do we need, we were talking about expediting, getting these meetings to the point. Well, is this really necessary for the commission?
I cannot speak to the legally necessary. This was an agenda and a process that I kind of inherited and I'm moving
Yes.
forward with. However, it is a standalone document. We use the network analysis for things other than the comprehensive plan. For our own technical analyses, when people give us trip generation distribution letters and things like that, it helps us. So we use that document for other things.
Sure.
And so we will be asking the city council to adopt it by resolution as our transportation network analysis. So from that perspective, it is helpful for them to have you guys take a look at it first and provide that recommendation. To be a little bit more in the detail side of things.
So you really think they're gonna look at this
Do I really think that?
and adopt it? And say, yeah, this is really, I don't think so. That's just my personal opinion.
I don't necessarily disagree with you. But the idea is that they would read it and that we would, when we go to the workshop, that they are prepared to ask questions or provide suggestions and that there would be an adoption so that we can move forward with it as some baseline information for our stuff. Similar to the land capacity analysis, that itself isn't going to be in the comp plan, but it is foundational data that people may want to see as we reference it.
So this will drive a final text.
Yes.
Yes,
The transportation element of the comprehensive plan.
this will be a small piece of
A
that.
small piece of that.
Mhm.
Okay.
And this
When-
has to come to us, just looking at the establishment and the job that the planning commission has. This has to be presented to us in some form. My point, and I think is yours, is that it's got to be condensed and streamlined. Because the technical part of it, I mean, there's a few people in here. Charlie's one of them, Jim's another. I don't know, Eugene, you seem to have a background that want to be technical and
Mhm.
yeah, I'm not sure that our recommendation to the council is that we're the technical experts and we're recommending this.
Right.
We've had it explained to us and we're making a motion for you to consider it.
Yes.
Well said, Mr. Chair.
Well, and the other part of that is how many times do we get asked, where's the data? Where are you getting your data from? I appreciate this because it gives me the facts that I need, the data to understand the conclusions that are being drawn. Frankly, I mean, I appreciate staff and staff trust you guys immensely. But if I'm making a recommendation to city council, and I can tell you after presenting to city council a number of times, there are many council persons that will ask you, where's the data? I want to see the data. So I differ with you a bit. We need to see the data. We need to know where this information is coming from and how it was derived. Because it's easy to throw numbers around. But what these guys have done for us is they've taken the numbers and made them understandable, in my opinion. But you got to have the numbers first.
Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you, and thank you, commissioners. I too am of the belief that the more we know as a commission, the better we as service providers to our community. It pains me when an individual comes up to a city council member or a planning commissioner and they ask the why. And then the answer back to them is, well, it's in the document, you'll have to go read it. Or we didn't approve it, the city council approved it, so you'll have to ask them. If we are not equipped with the information in total, whether we have condensed it in form, then we are not doing our job, I would say. Because yes, this is a lot to read, a lot to learn, a lot to know. And it is somewhat repetitive because we have to go back. Because unlike many public officials say, well, the average guy out there, or gal out there, they won't know. We were the average guy and the average gal. At one time before now, we are the planning commissioners. So to assume that the rest of the folks, or the majority, won't quite get it, is to presume Now, we really don't get it. We're just sitting here in name only. I appreciate what you say about more. We understand the way it's going to be driven, how it will be attached at the end of the day. And those people who know or want more will have an avenue to look for it. But it certainly helps me quite a lot because I'm just a commissioner. However, all of the people outside of this unit, this room, have the ability to ask us, walking on the street when they recognize us, hey, what were they meaning about this? And we have to be prepared to answer it. And so this gives us that opportunity to not just paint by numbers, but know what the paint is going to look like at the end of the day. So while I appreciate you, and we differ in that realm, I still appreciate the opportunity to say, most people in my world know a lot about a lot and contribute a lot. And maybe I'm hanging around people only like me, but I don't think so. I think people recognize things are going on in the community and they just don't know. And they're tired of paying their tax dollars, not being able to know all
Well,
the story.
that kind of goes along with being a part of this commission, is that we're going to have to do our homework. We have to read these things and we have to ask questions. Commissioner Baumker.
Yeah, I got a question.
Yes.
I don't see any cost numbers.
There are cost estimates. They were in an appendix that
Is that,
I can make those available, but they are about 120 megabytes, so it would be difficult for me to email them. They're very large appendices, so.
that's when we look at the recommendation, if we don't know what the cost is, it's kind of difficult.
Sure.
To sign up to the recommendation without knowing.
Unfortunately, cost is not in our purview.
It's not in our
That's-
purview.
that's-
That's not on our purview.
It's,
And
we recommend it, and we know right now that Ben has told us and others that, I mean,
Never.
yeah.
Happy to provide that if you'd
No,
like to.
if that's not part of our, then we'll be purview.
Yeah, that's a council thing. Yes, Commissioner Mullings.
Just to add on to a little bit of what Commissioner Garcia said, I also view this as a good form of checks and balances and making sure that the planning commission is aware of these facts as well and questioning where they come from. That the citizens don't have to ask that question necessarily because we've done our homework and that's our purpose to make that recommendation to the council. So that they know that we're doing our jobs. And it doesn't mean that the council won't also ask that, but that's why we're here. So I do think that there is probably a good balance between condensing things down, but also having the information. And it doesn't mean that we have to read it word for word and understand every single thing that's in there, but we can do our best with the information that we're provided ahead of time to make those recommendations. So again, checks and balances, that's why we're here. So that's my comment to that.
Okay. Now, do you want to go through this page by page, or do you want to just, if anybody had questions? Did anybody, as you went through this, and I know that Charlie did, as he contacted me, and the issue was more of probably the onerous nature of it, but we know that we're going to have a summary. Did anybody have any specific questions that they want to discuss or ask staff? I didn't have any. I thought it was done very, very well, and I had looked even for the spelling of names and
Good. That's exactly what we need.
Good. I'm good.
Therefore, I make a motion that we recommend to the city council that they adopt the 2025 Liberty Lake Network Analysis Update.
I'll second that.
Commissioner Mann made the motion and Commissioner Baumker seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimously, and we'll make that recommendation sometime in the future. And-
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Will that coincide with us doing a planning commission report? Because we do that once a month too.
The recommendation, I will put in the documents for them, for the council to see so that they see that this has been recommended by you guys.
Okay.
That's going to be a learning curve for me on how those recommendations are formally passed on, but I will figure that out. City council is scheduled to have a similar presentation at their meeting next week. So I'm hoping to get your recommendation included with that so that, again, things can keep moving forward and we don't have to keep coming back.
Okay. Are we going to move on then to the preemptive state laws for infill housing.
So I'll pass it to.
Yeah,
Lance,
so we've previously looked at housing code, a few months ago. We were just made aware kind of this week of additional requirements by the state.
are these new requirements?
These are new.
Are
Yeah.
they willing to extend the time for us to work on these, or are they just added?
They're, as far as I know, they're just added.
And so when they do the review, this has to be covered, or they'll send it back to us.
These have to be adopted by June 30th of 2026.
Okay,
Mhm.
please go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll do just a quick overview here. This is for existing buildings only. So this is not for new construction. This is a building has to be in existence right now for this to be applicable. And what it is it's converting that space into multifamily units to address housing needs. It's under RCW 35A 21- or .440. I think that's one that's applicable to us. And it's only allowed in the zones where multifamily is already permitted. So those would be the zones right there. So anyways, I'll just give you just kind of a summary of what the RCW says. There's some, when I went through it, it's a little hard to understand. And so I had to give a call to Commerce and actually go over it with them. But what it does is it increases the maximum densities. In our mixed use zones, we don't have max densities already, so we're okay there. It limits our ability to put additional requirements upon the developer who's doing this project. So you can't require additional parking or change setbacks or anything like that. Typically would require a change of use permit if you're looking at a commercial building and changing it into apartments. That is not allowed now. So that would usually in change of use we would look at things like landscaping and parking. So we're not going to be looking at that. However, we would still have a building permit for the construction, the remodel that occurs. Additionally, we would look at something like SEPA where we'd do a transportation impact study. We can't look at that, so we can't put any requirements upon the developer to upgrade a traffic light or anything like that. Which is interesting. And then in our mixed use zones right now, we require 50% of the development to be commercial, along with the residential. We're not going to be allowed to do that now, except for we can put requirements upon the ground floor, but the stories above it, we can't require that be commercial at all. And like Amy said, we do need to make these changes to the code by June 30th of this year. So we don't need any action today. I just want to give you kind of the options that they laid out in their little fact sheet, where we can go ahead and make these changes and adopt them by June 30th. We could allow preemption to occur. Therefore, the state you would basically overrule our existing code, or they've allowed you to put interim controls in there with an ordinance. It's another option. Also, they specifically said you can't use a moratorium on the conversion process to avoid this preemption. So we will need to either decide if we want to go forward with allowing preemption or make those changes.
So they include funding for some more staff to do this?
No, I don't think there's any additional funding.
How's this going to impact your guys' workload?
It's going to be a challenge.
So let's just, in terms of what the planning commission does is we just please continue to do what is mandated, but when it comes to the optional things.
Yeah.
If you've got something that is specific for us to consider, then great, but
Sure.
Sorry.
Yeah.
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 So the hope is to bring back language either at the next meeting or the meeting after, for you guys to consider and for us to go through the process of changing the code.
I think what will be easiest is making its own kind of separate section in our development code specifically for this type of development, as opposed to going through it.
You just flip.
Yeah.
That was the package, was it? Flip back, yeah.
Back or for, like,
Which way are you talking about back?
No, to what they're requiring us to do.
this one?
In other words, right there.
Well, this only applies to existing commercial buildings that are being converted to multifamily.
In zones that already allow multifamily,
Correct, but not new construction?
not new
Not new
construction.
construction.
Okay,
Yes.
now I feel better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're-
While he's thinking.
Mhm. Sure.
Commissioner Mann.
I find it interesting that they won't require an environmental study.
Mhm.
They're talking out of both sides of their mouth, the
Yeah,
state.
yeah.
It's absurd.
Mhm.
Agreed.
Yeah, the environmental impact study. Commissioner Herschel, you've had your
Can we
hand
take a
up.
look at what our risk level is? In other words, how many buildings would this even affect?
Sure.
Maybe 3, 2, 9?
We'll know
Yeah.
when you give us the information.
There's still going to be some more clarification too, probably from Commerce. They have a fact sheet out for infill housing, but they don't necessarily have a fact sheet out for this specific RCW or anything like that. So there might be something more coming along, which will give us a little more detail. But yeah, I can try to identify the big structures that would have a big
Sure.
impact.
Another
and bring
unfunded
those to you.
Our risk level is very low. We have 2 or 3 buildings for that matter. Okay, guys, thank you.
Yeah, it could be.
Well, you want to bet on it?
Exists.
Yeah, I'll bet on it.
Okay.
Quite a few.
Some of those empty,
Quite
yeah,
a few now.
Yeah, but they're all being converted to.
well, if they are going to be converted,
Well,
then,
that,
go ahead.
could the code require, something with respect to, I know you can't do a transportation study,
Mhm.
but can you have a requirement that there be
Transportation impact.
access to public transportation?
I don't believe they addressed that specifically. We could ask, but I'm doubtful based on the other things they're prohibiting us from requiring that would normally be part of it.
Because it would make, with those restrictions,
Mhm.
to have access to public transportation would kind of make sense.
It's logical,
Yes.
Okay.
that maybe it's fatal.
But no
flaw.
other transportation or environmental impact.
No, you can require, I mean, we can require them not to eliminate the parking that already exists.
Yeah.
But we can't make them create additional parking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which,
Okay.
Mr. Chair, so if there is a traffic impact and they compare it to this baseline study that you've got, and it looks like we need a left turn lane or double left turn lane or, even a signalized traffic pedestrian crossing, we can't require them to do it. The taxpayer has to suck it up.
Yes.
Nice.
Good summary.
I guess that's fair.
Any other questions? Anything else, Lance, on this?
No, like I say, we'll try to bring some actual language to you
Okay.
the next time that we present it. And I'll be in contact. The head of the infill housing at Department of Commerce, I've already been in contact with, so I'll just
We'll
stay in
have another
contact.
workshop.
Mhm. Yeah, but this is just a general overview.
Yeah. Thanks.
Mhm.
All right, if there's nothing else, citizen comments, is there anybody online, Shane? Secretary's report.
I don't have much. There is a schedule that's included in the back, and as per the usual secretary's report, it will be changing. I will be updating it. After this, I want to make sure that we have the review of the full and final transportation element. And there's a couple other small things to make sure that we get everything. There's a couple small changes that have been made since then that haven't come across your guys' desk yet, so I'll be working on the schedule and providing that at the next meeting.
Well-
We also do have we currently have a vacant adjunct position and we have an application in, so I'll be meeting with the mayor, and we'll be reviewing that application and interviewing that person next week.
Has that been
Commissioner.
advertised? Has that been advertised?
I believe so.
Where would we find it?
It's
On
the
our
city's website.
City's Facebook page had it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other report?
Nope.
All right, if there's no other business, is there any other commissioner report that you'd like to do other than we did at the beginning, Commissioner Bowker?
yeah, it's a question and a comment, and if it's not part of the scope, just let me know. But the question is there any, does the city of Liberty Lake have any code or zoning restrictions with respect to data centers?
With respect to what? I'm sorry?
Data centers?
Oh.
I would have to look. The way our zoning code is written is that if we have our use matrix that lists all the different uses that could be.
I think about data centers.
Yeah, so what we,
Thing, you know?
yeah, so what we would do is we would look at the definitions of the uses that are close, and if it could be considered similar to those uses, then that would be the code that would apply to that.
Let's take a look at that and see if we need to do something.
Yeah, but
You-
if not.
You should look at the portal.
Oh, yeah.
That is a data center.
Sure.
Yeah, they are providing backup for Washington State Patrol.
Mhm.
They're providing backup for a number of banks. That is a data center and they're
So they're doing-
huge. Yeah, there's huge computers in the basement of that building. I've been there.
I think you'll find there are multiple data centers here. A lot.
So then I guess the answer would be, no, there's no code restriction with respect to data center.
Well, what I would say is that those may have not been those may not have come in as applications to us where we knew those uses were in use as far as a new data center. Oftentimes uses in buildings shift and change and turn into other uses, and the city isn't necessarily made aware of that. Again, going back to the change of use comment from commercial to multifamily, we normally require a change of use permit, but those are not always submitted to us. So,
So then we find out there's a new business in there
yes,
and a data center.
yes, and then.
One of the obvious ways to look at and to identify them.
Well, and you'll need to make discrimination between data storage and data processing. Because they're two different things. What is done over there is at the
Storage.
portal is data storage.
Storage, which.
Yeah,
and I think there's
providing
a difference
access.
Between.
Yeah,
what-
very different.
Yeah.
But they do they have two Caterpillar V12 backup generators.
Yeah.
That will turn on within 10 seconds of a power outage.
So I guess I have to define my question when I'm talking about data center, I'm talking about like an artificial intelligence data center.
Yeah. Processing center.
Yeah, one of those things, cryptocurrency kind of thing, you know, those
Yeah.
kinds of things.
Yes, I understand.
Okay.
I just have to see if there's anything in our code right now that currently addresses that. If there's nothing in our code that's close or that actually directly addresses that, then it's considered not allowed. That's the way that the code language reads.
Interesting. So.
Till you get caught.
Exactly.
Until you get caught. So I have it's kind of a request. And again, it may be not part of the scope. However, I've heard conflicting stories with respect to any issues regarding water. And maybe it's
Water conservation, is that what you're talking about?
kind of like, do we really have to worry about water conservation because we have an infinite supply of water in the
Which we know we don't have an infinite supply.
But I've
Yeah.
heard comments that.
Oh, there's a group that gets together and talks about that too, so.
Well, should the planning commission request some kind of a presentation from, I was gonna say a hydrologist, but maybe somebody from the,
River keepers?
no, I'm thinking maybe, Spokane Water and Sewer.
DOE does most of the monitoring of the rivers, isn't it?
Okay, so we got a crappy snowpack this year. It's gonna be,
Mhm.
right now it's gonna look like a disaster. Does that have any impact on us and how we have to, from a planning perspective, does it have any impact whatsoever?
Yes.
Sure.
But
Yes,
it does.
it does. So as part of our capital facilities and utilities chapter, we did meet with the water district, both water districts, to ask about their capacity to serve our future growth projections. And they both purveyors indicated that they are not concerned about the ability to serve our growth with like residential water connections. That being said, when you look at water conservation and water usage, there are definitely strategies that we could employ that would protect that resource.
I mean, so is the answer that we really don't have to worry about it because there's adequate water?
I don't think that was that was the answer that was given, is that they had adequate service. We already know that.
Oh, well, I wasn't talking, my question wasn't service at all.
I know, but that's the answer that they got.
On the ground, is there enough of it?
Yeah, they're saying that there
That,
is.
that is, that's a good question that I will have somebody else answer for.
Yeah, well, I think it does go to the issue of watering lawns and those kinds of things, and data centers, yes.
You're connecting the dots. for me.
Yes, I get
Thank you,
it.
sir.
yeah.
From my perspective in growing and developing a couple of different things here in Limerick Lake, I'm finding the real threat to the water supply is not the snowpack. That's very capricious. It changes
Agreed.
from year to year. And Mother Nature helps us there. However, the real threat is the development that goes on in Kootenai County.
Especially Post Falls right now.
It's not just Gooding County, it's Idaho.
Yep.
You're not wrong.
And that's just one thing that really reinforces the idea there has to be some kind of a commission that
Yes,
allows this whole area to communicate on every single topic that you have.
Yeah.
Traffic flow, electricity usage, water usage.
emergency evacuation routes. Yep,
We're working at different objectives.
agreed. Okay, let's continue the other agenda issues.
Move to adjourn.
Yes, we have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I won't disagree this time.
Great meeting,
Sorry.
great meeting.